Welcome, YouTubers, to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In this video, there's going to be 22 practice test questions covering ratios, rates, and proportions, which is a topic that frequently appears in the mathematics knowledge, as well as the arithmetic reasoning subtest of the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, that is the ASVAB, as well as the pre-screening Internet Delivered Computer Adaptive Test, that is the PiCAT. More specifically, you should expect to see at least 2 to 5 questions from this topic on the actual ASVAB and PiCAT. And as a reminder, you're not permitted to use a calculator or a reference sheet on either of those tests. Of course, in order to get the most from this video, you'll want to pause the video after I read a practice test question, attempt to solve the question on your own, and then resume the video to check your solution. Finally, I quickly want to mention this. Please stop paying for tutoring or access to online boot camps. The reality is 95% or more of you are more than capable of passing this very simple test on your own, as long as you spend a few days to a month studying for it. Likewise, having evaluated all the other tutors out there, I can tell you that many of them have done little more than copy my free content. Instead, I'd recommend that you use the following free resources. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can look at my playlist and you can see that I have a review for every concept that frequently appears on the ASVAB and PiCAT. In addition, I have a math bootcamp playlist that covers nothing but practice test questions. And finally, I have over 500 shorts videos, all of which are free, that you can use to really sharpen your mental math. Of course, I'll put links to all those things in the description of this video. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. This ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning Practice Test question says the weight of two cars can be expressed as a ratio of 3 to 4. If the lighter car weighs 2,400 pounds, how much does the heavier car weigh? So we're told that their weight can be expressed as the ratio of 3 to 4. That's going to be equal to, again, this 3 corresponds to the lighter weight. We know the lighter vehicle weighs 2,400 pounds. The heavier vehicle's weight is unknown. So to solve this ratio, we're just going to use cross multiplication. This says 3x equals 4 times 2,400. If you can't do that mentally, do 24 times 4 off to the side. This is 16, carry a 1. That's 8, 9. So 4 times 2,400 is going to be 9,600. And divide both sides by 3 now to get x by itself. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So the weight of the heavier car is C, 3,200 pounds. This ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning Practice Test question says 3 in every 8 people in a town voted for candidate A. Candidate A's name is Francis John Brown, FJB. All others voted for candidate B. If 640 people voted in the town's election, how many people voted for candidate B? So according to the problem, 3 out of every 8 people voted for candidate A. By extension, that means 5 out of every 8 people must have voted for candidate B. To figure out how many people voted for candidate B in total, we're going to do 5/8 times 640. Write 640 as a fraction by placing it over 1. Cross reduce. 8 goes into 8 one time. 8 goes into 64 8 times. Tack on that 0. Now we can just multiply this out. 5 divided by 1 is 5. 80 divided by 1 is 80. 5 times 8 is 40. Again, just tack on that 0. So 5 times 80 is 400. In other words, 400 people voted for candidate B over FJB. This ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning Practice Test question says 1 in every 9 people in a town voted for Party A. All others voted for Party B. If 810 people voted in the town's election, how many people voted for Party B? So this problem says 1 out of every 9 people voted for Party A. Therefore, we know that 8 out of every 9 people must have voted for Party B. To figure out how many people voted for Party B in total, we're going to take 8 over 9. We're going to multiply that by 810. We can make 810 as a fraction by placing it over 1. Now we can cross reduce. 9 goes into 9 one time. 9 goes into 81 9 times. 9 goes into 810 90 times. 8 over 1 is just 8. 90 divided by 1 is just 90. 8 times 9 is 72. Therefore, 8 times 90 is going to be 720. So in other words, D, 720 people voted for Party B. This ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning Practice Test question says a store had 6 hamsters selling for $12 each and 12 rabbits selling for $20 each. Today, only 1 hamster and 8 rabbits were left. In terms of dollars, what was the ratio of sales of hamsters to rabbits? So again, we had 6 hamsters. There's only one left. 6 minus 1 means 5 of them were sold at $12 a piece. Let's look at rabbits now. There were 12 in the store. Now there's 8. 12 minus 8 means 4 of them were sold and they are $20 a piece. So this is our ratio. 5 times 12 is 60. 4 times 20 is 80. Again, we can cross out these corresponding zeros to make this ratio 6 to 8. And since both of these have a common factor of 2, we can divide both of them by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our ratio is B, 3 to 4. For this arithmetic reasoning practice test question, we're comparing the sales of puppies with the sales of kittens using a ratio. Of course, if you read through the problem, you'll figure out that 4 puppies were sold. They cost $104 each, and we're comparing that with the 4 kittens that were sold that cost $24 each. First thing I want to do is reduce this by a common factor of 4. This becomes 104 to 24. Reduce this by a common factor of 2 to make it a little bit easier. This becomes 12. This becomes 52. Again, common factor of 2. We can reduce this by a common factor of 2. This is 6. This is going to be 26. Common factor of 2. One more time. This becomes 3. This becomes 13. So the ratio of sales to puppies to kittens is A, 13 to 3. Solve this arithmetic reasoning practice test question for the ASVAB and PiCAT. It says the weight of 2 cars can be expressed as a ratio of 2 to 3. If the lighter car weighs 1,200 pounds, how much does the heavier car weigh? So this one basically tells you to use a ratio to solve it. Again, we know the car weights have a ratio of 2 to 3. Likewise, we know that the lighter car weighs 1,200 pounds and the weight of the heavier car is unknown, so we could represent that with the letter variable x. For ratios and proportions, you solve them via cross multiplication. This becomes 2 times x equals, well, let's do this mentally. 3 times 1,200. Well, 3 times 12 is 36. Just bring down those 2 zeros. Divide both sides by 2 now to get x by itself. Uh, you should know that 36 divided by 2 is 18, and just bring down those 2 zeros. So the answer to this one is D. This ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question, we're trying to figure out what the ratio of the sales of sharks to catfish is in terms of dollars at a fish store. And if you read through this problem, you should be able to pretty easily determine that 4 sharks were sold for $75 a piece, whereas 3 catfish were sold for $25 a piece. So this is our ratio. You could reduce it here if you wanted to, but I'm going to multiply this one out. 4 times 75 is 300, of course. 3 times 25 is going to be 75. We can reduce this by a common factor of 25. 300 divided by 25 is 12. 75 divided by 25 is 3. We're not finished because we can reduce this by a common factor of 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So the ratio of the sales in terms of dollars is going to be C, 4 to 1. This ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question says it takes 3 coffee cups to make 1 quart. If a coffee cup is a half filled, what part of a quart is in the coffee cup? So at first glance, you might think this is a conversion problem. It's not. A coffee cup is a non-standard unit of measurement. That said, we're going to use a ratio to solve this one. Again, we know that uh, 3 coffee cups correspond to 1 quart. We want to know how many quarts are in a half of a coffee cup. So that's going to be our ratio there. Cross multiply, this becomes 3x equals 1/2. Solve for x by dividing both sides by 3. This crosses out. Again, right here we have 1/2 divided by 3. I could write 3 as a fraction by placing it over 1. Then we could use keep change flip. 1/2 times 1/3 equals 1/6. So to answer this question, B, 1/6 of a quart is in a half-filled coffee cup given this ratio. For this arithmetic reasoning practice test question for the ASVAB and PiCAT, we're comparing 2 squares. So if it's helpful, you can go ahead and make a quick sketch. We're told specifically that their side lengths have a ratio of 3 to 1 or 1 to 3. So that means this could be 1, this could be 3. Well, you should know that in squares, all the sides are equal. So if this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, this is 1. If this is 3, this must be 3, this must be 3, and this must be 3. Now let's compare their perimeters. To find the perimeter of any uh, polygon, you simply add up all of its sides. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 3, 6, 9, 12. So they have a ratio, their perimeters have a ratio of 12 to 4. Of course, we could reduce that by a common factor of 4. This becomes 3 to 1. So the ratio of their perimeters is C, 3 to 1. This ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question says a photograph is 6 inches long and 4 inches wide. If it is enlarged to 9 inches long, how wide will it be? So for this one, we could use a proportion to solve it. Again, we could say the length of this photograph, 6 inches, over its width, 4 inches, is going to be equal to or proportional to its new length and width. That is 9 inches over its new width, which is unknown. We'll call that x. This becomes 4 times 9, which is 36, equals 6 times x, or 6x. Divide both sides by 6 now to get x by itself. This says x equals 36 over 6, which is just 6. So its new width is a 6 inches. This ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question says a photograph is 9 inches long and 6 inches wide. If it is enlarged to 15 inches long, how wide will it be? So we can use a proportion to quickly solve this one. Again, its length over its width, that is 9 over 6, is going to be equal to or proportional to its new length, which is 15, over its new width, which is unknown. So we'll call that x. You solve proportions via cross multiplication. 9 times x is 9x. 6 times 15 we could do off to the side if you can't do it mentally. 5 times 6 is 30. Bring down a 0, carry a 3. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. So this is 9x equals 90. Divide both sides by 9 to get x by itself. This crosses out, leaving you with x equaling 90 divided by 9, which is 10. So the new width of our photograph is C, 10 inches. PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question. We're told that 1 kilometer is approximately 5/8 of a mile. We want to know what the equivalent amount of kilometers is if we drove 600 miles. So we can use a proportion to solve this one. Again, this amount's unknown, so we'll call it x. Let's solve this via some simple cross multiplication. 5/8 times x is 5/8 x, equals 1 times 600, or just 600. Let's get rid of this 5/8 by multiplying both sides by its reciprocal, notably 8 over 5. This crosses out here and here, leaving you with x on this side. Let's place this over 1 so we can cross reduce. 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 60 12 times, therefore 5 goes into 600 120 times. 8 over 1 is just 8. 120 over 1 is just 120. 8 times 120 is very easy to do mentally. 8 times 12 is 96. Just tack on that 0. So those 600 miles is approximately 960 kilometers. ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question says a map of Texas has a scale of 2 inches, corresponds to 11 miles. The actual distance between Dallas and San Antonio is about 440 miles. How far apart are the cities on the map? So in this case, we're going to use a ratio to solve this one. We know 2 inches corresponds to 11 miles. That's going to be equal to an unknown number of inches on the map, so call that x, corresponds to 440 actual miles. Let's go ahead and solve this one via cross multiplication. We got 11 times x, which is 11x. 2 times 440. You should be able to do that one mentally, but if you can't, you could do it off to the side, certainly. This is 088, so this is 880 equals 11x. Let's divide both sides by 11 now. This becomes x equals, now you should also be able to do this one mentally. 88 divided by 11 is 8, and just tack on that extra 0. So on the map, they would, this ASVAB PiCAT arithmetic reasoning practice test question says, on a map, 2 centimeters represents 6 miles. If two towns are 12 centimeters apart on the map, what is the actual distance between two towns? So we can use a proportion to solve this one. Again, we know 2 centimeters corresponds with 6 miles. That's going to be equal to 12 centimeters, corresponding to an unknown actual number of miles. Again, I kept centimeters up here, centimeters are up here, miles are down here, miles are down here. Now that we set this up, we solve it via cross multiplication. This becomes 2x equals 6 times 12, which is 72. Divide both sides by 2 to get x by itself. If you can't do 72 divided by 2 mentally, again, do the long division. 2 goes into 7 3 times without going over. That's 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Drop down this 12. 2 times 6 is 12 with no remainder, so we're done. So x is 36. We know the two towns are B, 36 miles apart. This practice test question for the ASVAB and PiCAT says this: on a map, 1 centimeter represents 4 miles. A distance of 10 miles would be how far apart on the map. So for this one, we're going to use a proportion to solve it. Notably, 1 centimeter corresponds to 4 miles. That's going to be equal to x, or unknown amount of centimeters, corresponding to 10 miles. You solve proportions using cross multiplication. You do 4 times x, which is 4x, 1 times 10, which is just 10. Divide both sides by 4 to get x by itself. This crosses out, leaving you with x on this side. If you can't do 10 divided by 4 mentally, you could always do it as long division. 10 divided by 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Add a decimal. Drop down that 0 placeholder. 4 times 5 is 20 with no remainder. So x in this case is 2.5. In other words, the answer is C. 2.5 centimeters corresponds to 10 miles. ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning Practice Test question says if a 4-foot post casts a 9-foot shadow at the same time that a nearby tree casts a 36-foot shadow, how tall is the tree? So we're going to use a proportion to solve this one. This is the height of the post over the length of its shadow. That's going to equal the height of the tree, which is unknown, call it x, over the length of its shadow. That's 36 according to this problem. We solve proportions using cross multiplication. This becomes 9x equals 4 times 36. What is 4 times 36? Let's do it off to the side if you can't do it mentally. This is 24. Carry a 2, 12, 14. So this becomes 9x equals 144. Divide both sides by 9 to get x by itself. What is 144 divided by 9? That's going to be 1. 9. Subtract, that's going to be 5. 4. 9 times 6 is exactly 54 with no remainder. So the height of this tree is C. This ASVAB PiCAT Math Knowledge Practice Test question says simplify the ratio 60 to 105. So for this one, you should notice that 60 and 105 have a common factor of 15. In other words, we can reduce both of these by dividing them by 15. 60 divided by 15, well, that's 15, 30, 45, 60. That's 4. What about 105? Again, that's 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105. So this ratio reduces to be 4 to 7. This ASVAB PiCAT Math Knowledge Practice Test question says simplify the ratio 12 to 18. So we're given the ratio 12 to 18, and we want to simplify it. In other words, we want to find a number that goes into both 12 and 18 evenly. You should recognize right away that both 12 and 18 are divisible by 6. Specifically, 12 divided by 6 is going to be 2, and 18 divided by 6 is going to be 3. So when we simplify this ratio, it becomes 2 to 3. That's all there is to that one. Don't overthink it because it's as simple as that. This ASVAB PiCAT Math Knowledge Practice Test question says if the ratio of the side length of square A to the side length of square B is 1 to 4, what is the ratio of their perimeters? So we know their side lengths have a ratio of 1 to 4. So I can say this side length is 1 and this side length is 4. Well, we know some characteristics of squares, notably that in squares all the sides are equal. So if this side's 1, all these other sides are 1. Let's find the perimeter of square A. It's going to be 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, or 4. Again, to find perimeter, you just add up all the sides. Let's apply the same thing over here to square B. If this side's 4, all these other sides are also 4. To find its perimeter, you just add up all of its sides. 4, 8, 12, 16. Let's find the ratio of their perimeters. It's 4 to 16. These have a common factor of 4 that we can divide out. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So the ratio of their perimeters is C, 1 to 4. ASVAB PiCAT Math Knowledge Practice Test question says if the ratio of the side length of square A to the side length of square B is 1 to 2, what is the ratio of their perimeters? So again, the side lengths of these squares have a ratio of 1 to 2. So I can say this side length is 1 and this side length is 2. That's our 1 to 2 ratio. Well, let's talk about finding the ratio of their perimeters. How do you find the perimeter of a square? You simply add up all of its sides. And if we know one side length of a square, we know all the side lengths since all the side lengths are equal. So these are all 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So the perimeter of this square is 4. Again, we know the side length is 2. So all these other side lengths are 2. How are we going to find the perimeter of this square? Just add up all of its sides. That's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8. All right, so our two perimeters are 4 and 8. Let's find a ratio of those. That's 4 to 8, but we can reduce this by a common factor of 4. This is 1 to 2. This ASVAB PiCAT Arithmetic Reasoning practice test question says if the ratio of the sides of two squares is 5 to 1, what is the ratio of their perimeters? So again, we know that the ratio of their sides is 5 to 1. So that means that this side could be 5 and this side could be 1. Now let's talk about their perimeters. Well, as far as squares are concerned, we should know that in squares, all the sides are equal. In other words, if this side's 5, all these other sides are 5. Likewise, if this side's 1, all these other sides are 1. Now let's find the perimeters of these squares. To find the perimeter of a square, you simply add up all of its sides. So this one's 5, 10, 15, 20. This one's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's talk about the ratio of their perimeters. It's clearly 20 to 4, but we can reduce this by a common factor of 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So the ratio of their perimeters is D 5 to 1.